Hello, you have a call at no expense to you
Hello?
from
Stephen Stearns.
an inmate at
Osceola County Corrections Department.
to accept this call was refused by the called party. Goodbye.
Sorry, I just haven't had enough of listening to that particular phone call just yet. So, I did say in yesterday's video that I would probably go to looking at 2 phone calls at a time. But when I went through and grabbed the phone calls for today's video, I realised that there were 3 phone calls in a row on June the 1st. So it makes sense to do all of them at once, which will at least get us a fair way through these phone calls. Now, as I mentioned in the comments section for the previous video, I had watched some of those earlier videos that I did yesterday. I watched a bit on the docket and I watched a bit on Plunder. But from here on in, I'm flying blind. So you are going to hear my reaction from hearing these phone calls for the first time. I will do my best to control my language because I get the gist from what a lot of people have said that I'm probably going to be quite triggered by these. I have noticed one person commented in yesterday's video that they were ready to have a break from this case. And honestly, I don't blame them. And I think it is important for us to all recognise when we've reached saturation point and to recognise how triggering this case is and the effect that it can have on our mental health. So don't feel bad if you need to dip out, because these videos will be up here permanently. You don't have to watch them all back to back. If you need a break from the case, walk away from it and watch some travel videos or something. Just keep tabs on your own mental health, because this is such a difficult case to think about and talk about. And we can only be there to tell Maddie's story if we look after our own mental health first. Now, having just done the mummy preach, let's just jump in and have a look at these phone recordings from June the 1st.
Hello, you have a call at no expense to you
Hello?
from
Stephen Stearns.
an
Debbie,
inmate
Stephen!
at
Osceola County Corrections Department.
This call will be recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking.
Hey, is this a good time?
Hola. Yeah, I was on the phone with somebody else, and first time you called in and inadvertently hit the wrong button. Hang on, I'm gonna put you on speaker. Hang on.
Oh my gosh, as if the guy isn't gross enough already, and we don't have enough things to trigger trauma responses. Then he just does that.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hey.
Somebody's in as well.
He's always in the well.
Yeah.
He's in a big room.
Yep, very echoey. Oh.
Did you get any of the books we sent yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
But I don't have any notification of anything being sent back either. I had
Okay.
a
All right.
meeting with the mental health director a couple days ago. She said
Okay.
they're going to take me down a step in custody level. So I'm going to be taken off non-acute status, and as soon as a space opens up in one of the regular isolation cells, I'll be moved to one of those.
You know what? I prefer Deb's suggestion. He should be down a well. That would be way more practical. Now, I did forget to mention in the intro to this, I have tweaked the audio for this a little bit now, just to make it a little bit louder. Let me know in the comments section if you want me to tweak it a bit more in the next video.
Okay, good.
Does that mean that we can get a document to you and we can get it signed now?
Possibly. She said they won't put any restrictions on me.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. And
Yeah,
when's that supposed to happen?
What's that?
Well, when is that supposed to happen?
Whenever a space opens up in one of those cells.
Oh, okay. All right.
She's
So,
on
okay.
space. This is a very crowded jail. There's over 2,000 inmates.
All right. And you'll still be in kind of isolated protection?
Yep, I'll still be in protective custody. I'll still be by myself. I just won't be under self-harm watch.
I hate the way he's so casual about, I just won't be on self-harm watch. Like, oh, look at poor me. I've just been, for 3 months now, I've been in the self-harm cell because I feel so sorry for myself. But now they're going to let me, when they've got an opening, go into just the regular isolation cells. You know, it's an overcrowded jail. Why not just let him share a cell with someone? Actually, no, we do want to see this guy at trial, so maybe he can share a cell after he's been convicted.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I won't be in any of the self-harm pods.
Okay.
So that's...
All right. Well, I guess that's better accommodations. You'll have concierge services?
Not likely, but, you know, I might actually have a rack to put my mat on, so I'm not going to be on the floor. Maybe I'll have, you know, a seat and a table. You know, who knows? But I won't be surrounded by crazies all the time.
Okay.
Or relatively so.
All right.
That should be an improvement at least.
He has to turn everything around, doesn't he, to try and elicit sympathy from his parents. Now, he actually mentioned various things in his previous phone calls which show us that he wasn't sleeping with his mat on the floor. He did have a quote-unquote bed. So to now turn around and basically try and give the impression that, well, at least now I won't be sleeping on the floor. Like, what a crock.
All right. Sounds good.
Yep. Any other news or updates on your end?
No. Everything's still status quo. Somebody sent us a link to a YouTube video that, I mean, these amateur sleuths, just are relentless. I mean, they just go down any and every, path they can go. And so this link to this YouTube video, had, tracked all your internet activity and all the sites that you had joined.
Dark web.
The dark web, whatever, but some of the offbeat websites. So I'm sure you know what I'm referring to without me having to name them.
Okay.
Well, that's a really interesting interaction. I love how we're all amateur sleuths. No, we're just YouTube creators who are talking about this case. Sometimes we'll do a bit of research on stuff to do with the case. Mostly, we're just looking at the case specifically. I think he's probably talking about Gray Hughes. I know Gray did a lot of research onto all the online stuff. But it's interesting that you have them, first of all, referring to the dark web, and then Chris dials it back and refers to it all being offbeat stuff. Well, how does Chris know that it's offbeat stuff? Is he also familiar with these particular web pages? Because he sounds quite blasé about it. Stefan's reaction is interesting. I think he is probably concerned that his parents have seen things that he doesn't want them to see.
So I'm just telling you that all that should exist out there. And, oh, by the way, you know, I sped through this 2-hour YouTube video, and your former roommates at the townhome that you rented have ratted you out in ways, and fabricated stories about a shared network drive and video that had been recorded, and supposedly approached your mother about them, threatening to disclose you in these videos, and that we paid them off, which was total bullshit. We've never heard about this until these videos and these asshole friends of yours have managed to get themselves on these YouTube channels and disclose all sorts of shit. Because I can tell you this, if any one of them, and we know who we're talking about, had come to us with that, we would have told them, feel free to do whatever you want. We're not paying you jack shit. If somebody had done something, I suggest you pursue it with them or the authorities, but don't bring this up to our attention ever again.
So, before he even starts with the whole story, Chris basically ratted himself out. He's claiming they're fabricated stories, but he begins it with saying your former flatmates ratted you out. Well, okay, so when someone says that someone ratted someone out, the implication there is that they have dobbed them in for something they have done, not something that this person has made up. So, out of the gate, he says they ratted Stefan out. And then he turns it around and says they're fabricated stories about the shared drive and about Chris and Deb paying them off. And he comes up with this whole line of, well, you know, had they come to see us, we would have told them just do what you've got to do, don't come to us about it. I find that highly unbelievable, because it's not the first time we've heard stories of Deb paying people off. And don't forget, these people are fully aware that these phone calls are being recorded. But once again, let's go back to the beginning of the conversation where he says the flatmates ratted Stefan out. If it's made up information, you say that they have made up information or they've come up with fabricated stories. You don't preface it by saying they ratted you out, because that is affirmative that you have done something wrong that you needed to be ratted out for. So, nice try, Chris, but you just don't come across as credible at all with this conversation. We know that they have enabled Stefan his entire life. Why would this situation be any different? And you know what? This actually does confirm that these flatmates are actually legitimate.
I can assure you that we would not have paid off anybody. It wouldn't have been our problem, and we wouldn't have paid for it, period.
So my former roommates are trying to blackmail you into paying them off?
No, they're claiming that they had supposedly come to us and blackmailed us, and that we paid them money, which they've described it in two events, one at a restaurant, and then your mother supposedly showing up at the townhome and with the manila envelope. And you and I know, and we all know, that is bullshit.
Yeah.
Didn't happen, didn't exist, never did it.
It never happened.
Now, I would have to go back and listen to those interviews with the flatmates, but I don't recall anything about a restaurant, and I don't recall a manila envelope as being specifically mentioned. It's interesting that he's adding additional information to this story. Seems like he's forgotten what's been said and what hasn't been said. And maybe I'm listening and reading it wrong, but Stefan actually sounds a little bit nervous when he laughs and says, basically agrees with Chris that, that never happened.
And if they had done that, I would have said, go ahead and do whatever you want. You're not getting a penny from me. It's not my problem, so don't even come to me with it. Period.
Note how what he's just said there is about Chris, not about Chris and Deb. He said, if they'd have come to me, I would have said this. I would have said, don't come to me, period. So he's actually not including Deb in the conversation here. He's just saying, essentially, had the situation been that they'd gone to him about it, this would have been his reaction. He's not denying anything to do with Deb. Nice little bit of gaslighting there. I've said it before, and I know the guy was a travelling salesman and he's a realtor. This guy would have made a brilliant politician because he knows how to spin things.
Are they aware that blackmail and coercion is also illegal?
Well, it's kind of a moot point when you're looking at the number of years ago this was, and right now it's their word, it's hearsay, but I'm just telling you what these amateur sleuths are repeating. Matter of fact, they even said that we owned the townhome, which we didn't.
We've been living in $1 million homes, and you were a spoiled, rotten kid because of it. And I'm thinking, we've never been in $1 million home.
But anyway.
The other thing that makes me think that there is a heck of a lot of truth to what these flatmates were saying about the stuff on the shared drive and about them being bought off is that they never made it sound like there was any form of blackmail or coercion. And yet, Chris is on the defensive here and claiming that these people have said that they blackmailed them. What does that tell you? That is classic gaslighting strategy. Turning the story around to make the other person look like the bad person in the situation. There was never any mention whatsoever from these flatmates about them trying to blackmail Chris or Deb. It was just a situation where they caught Stefan out, Deb found out about it, went and paid them off. Full stop, end of story. Nothing there to do with blackmail. But, of course, Chris and Deb have to turn it around. And then they've got these ridiculous stories that, I don't know, maybe it's something that Grey Hughes speculated on his channel because we know the guy is interesting. But I've never heard anyone speculate that Deb and Chris lived in $1 million mansion or anything like that. It is my understanding that the place that Stefan and his friends were living in Windermere did actually belong to Chris and Deb. And, part of that we heard the the friends say basically that he had put his foot down over things that needed to be done and had stopped paying rent, and that Chris had pressured Stefan to get rent off him. So to me it sounds like they definitely did own property in Windermere that Stefan was living in. And it wouldn't take much to research that and find out.
Anyway, I'm just telling you the bullshit that goes on out there, which is why I don't pay attention to these YouTube videos. But I'm just telling you, your former roommates have, done a nice job of sabotaging or discrediting your character and what have you. So.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. The things that his former flatmates have said are discrediting Stefan's character. You know what really is discrediting Stefan's character? The things that he did to Maddie. I think if anything, what we've heard from the flatmates has just confirmed the fact that Chris and Deb enabled Stefan his whole life. So whose character is it that's actually being made to look bad here? This is why he's upset, because him and Deb are being made to look bad. Stefan makes himself look bad enough. He doesn't need former friends to help him with that.
Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, throwing you under the bus and what have you. But I'm just relating this story of that's been repeated a few times about some video being recorded in the townhome, and that they came to us requesting, and we pleaded with them not to disclose it, and we paid them off, which is just absolute bullshit.
You should be very careful about that because they're seriously opening themselves up to a lawsuit for defamation.
Well, it takes money to sue somebody, and you have to prove it, and so no one's going to take a case like that pro bono, and it's not worth chasing. And
yeah, it's not worth chasing because there's probably a good chance that it's true. And you don't want to open that can of worms, do you? Because I'd imagine if there was a civil suit, that given the information that's come out on the internet, it wouldn't take much for them to be able to find other people who've been paid off by Deb Stearns in order to protect precious little Stefan. So I love how Chris very quickly comes up with reasons why we couldn't possibly sue. It would be so hard to prove. Yada yada. Well, it would actually be really hard to prove. And both sides would be really hard to prove unless the individual who was paid off could actually produce evidence of a check or something, which, given the time frame, would be really hard to do. But yeah, I love the way Chris is just all over that. Like, no, we couldn't do that possibly. Not at all. Too hard.
you have to prove damages, and we haven't suffered any damages. But I'm just telling you the bullshit that's floating out there.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But anyway, they've done their search, and they've discovered some of these websites that you've subscribed to, participated in, or what have you. So I'm just giving you a heads up that they are leaving no stone unturned as they go down a rat hole chasing this shit.
Crazy.
His one comment, crazy. He can't say anything about it because at the end of the day, he's brought this on himself. Why are people searching up these websites and stuff? Because people are trying to understand why this happened. And people are utterly terrified of the thought that there could be images of Maddie out there somewhere on the dark web. So yes, you will have people like, is it Obvious Benson? Brilliant. If you've not seen her, Oblivious Benson, I think it is. She's real techie. She's done some really great research. and Grey Hughes, if they've got the means to look into these websites that the rest of us either don't want to or can't look into, well, good for them. Like, we're all just trying to understand how this happened and all just trying to make sure that there's no further victimisation of Maddie. You've got no rights anymore, Stefan. You became a public figure the moment you were arrested. Get used to it. People are going to be digging into you for the rest of your life and probably afterwards.
Yep. Yep.
Don't even try to figure out why they did it, because we can't figure out why they did it, except
Who did it?
the roommate.
Okay. All right, we moved on past that.
Yeah, but
Deb really struggles quite often to let things go. In one of the previous videos, one of the previous phone calls, you could hear her starting to try and bring up something about Jen, and now she doesn't want to let go of this idea about the roommates ratting them out. Well, here's the thing, Deb. What Chris understood, but which you seem to have not fully grasped, is that all these phone calls have been recorded. Meaning that you live in Florida, which has got those sunshine laws or whatever they're called. So these phone calls will become public knowledge. And you carrying on about the roommates doesn't look so good for you.
the thing is that these YouTube sites give people a chance to talk with complete immunity, because they never check them, they never fact check them, they don't care about the facts, they just care about getting people to click on and pay them money for the YouTube site. So.
And supposedly these hosts of these YouTube channels pay these people to provide this information as well. So whatever that's worth.
Now, I've said myself, anytime someone calls into a YouTube channel claiming connections to a case, we always have to question it and ask, is this person real? What's the angle that they are selling here, etc. So Deb has made a good point. But at the same time, they've just confirmed that these flatmates were real. Yes, we do have to question what's said, but quite often you can tell from the way they're talking if you believe the information to be true. You never consider anything like that to be set in concrete when it comes from an outside source. But it's definitely something that you take into account. As for people paying people to call in, well, as much as I am not a fan of Grey Hughes, I think we can be pretty confident that he does not pay people to call in. These are people who you can tell. If you've listened to his channel, you know that they are genuine people, for the most part, that call in. And look, hello, this is a guy who, in a live stream, will completely shut down his live stream until his listeners pay out and give him money to continue his live stream. Do you think someone that's that tight with their money is going to pay people to come on? It doesn't make a difference to his views, because there are so many people that won't listen to his channel. Pretty certain he understands that. You're not going to ever see a spike in views on Grey Hughes' channel just because he gets someone call into his channel who knows anyone connected to a case. Yes, I do believe that there are some YouTubers who either pay people to call in or get friends to pretend they are someone. I have suspicions with this case that there is one person that has apparently inserted themselves into this case with knowledge, claiming to have connections that may have actually been connected to a YouTuber as opposed to connected to the case. But I won't go further into that. So, yeah, I can see on one hand what they're saying, but no, I don't see people being paid to call in to Grey Hughes.
And some roommate.
Oh yeah, the roommate. That's really funny. So reading this interview of the former roommate said that both you and were grossly overweight, and you both had
gastric
bypass. I mean, I'm just telling you, this shit is just what? I don't. They didn't disclose her name, okay? But you know, to say that you had gastric bypass, which you've never had, and that you were grossly overweight, which you never were, again, is the bullshit that's just floating out there on these YouTube channels.
Now, you can tell that he is actually genuinely amused by that, that's actually that former flatmate that contacted another channel and reckoned that she had lived in the townhouse and there were so many inconsistencies. And I did question the comment that Stefan and Jen had bonded over a gastric band. Because if you go back, you can see photos of Stefan over the period of time that they were together, and he doesn't appear to be like grossly overweight. And if you look at Chris and Deb, yeah, in some of their younger photos they are kind of chunky, but none of those three look like they have the sort of metabolism that would lead to them becoming grossly overweight. So I actually believe Chris in this instance, and especially because I was already questioning this supposed former flatmate and the validity of things she was saying. And Chris really does sound amused, like genuinely amused by this thing, which says a lot for me. Note the difference when they spoke about the guys who had lived with with Stefan, and were talking about the shared drive and them supposedly paying these guys off and everything. You didn't hear that reaction from Chris or Deb. This is so laughable kind of reaction. They were utterly incensed by the idea, and they had to go overboard to point out how untrue it was. This one, in terms of this supposed flatmate talking about the gastric band, they literally laughed it off. They laughed about it and then just tossed it away. They didn't need to over-explain it, which, like I said, says to me that legitimately Stefan never had a gastric band. Where's the evidence of it other than this person claiming to be someone that they're not?
Some had gastric bypass, but
Yep.
it's not a big deal these days.
Understand. But they're saying that you had it, you know?
And they're saying that she refused to take her bipolar meds, which she was very forgetful, you know, and didn't do a lot. But they were saying that it was not ADHD, but they thought she was autistic. And like going, no, she wasn't. She wasn't autistic.
It was a question mark. You know, you had one doctor saying that she was possibly on the spectrum, another saying, no, it doesn't seem like it, she's just ADHD. And other doctors didn't know, so it was a question mark.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a three-ring circus out there with these YouTube channels, which is why I don't watch them. Your mother doesn't watch them, but every now and then somebody sends us a link to something. And like I said, I sped viewed it and, came away with a little bit of information and a lot of bad information, misinformation, inaccurate information, but it is what it is. And, so I'm not going to bother with it. You have to consider the source and the validity of it, and everybody's highly speculative about whatever they come across, and then they try to make something monumental out of it that just doesn't
They
exist,
truly are bitter about YouTubers, aren't they? I mean, at the end of the day, what do you expect? This is a high-profile case. People are going to talk about this case. People are going to be talking about this case for a very long time. So you need to just get used to it. Chances are there may be more people in the future who come forward who knew Jen, or people who knew Stefan. And what are you going to do about it?
I don't know how they can even find jurors that haven't listened to some of this crap.
Yeah.
They can't.
It's tainted. It's tainted. The whole thing is tainted now.
Yeah, they might have to shop it out to a different venue, but even at that point, I think it's going to be hard to find anyone who hasn't heard about all this.
Here we go with the, the jurors are all going to be tainted before the case starts because every single individual in America is watching these YouTubers. Well, I wish that was the case because that might actually help me with my views and my subscribers. But we know that's not the case. Yes, there is a community of people on YouTube, there is a community of people on Facebook, Reddit, Patreon, etc., who are following this case and who do discuss this case. But I'm pretty certain you're going to be able to find a jury pool that is not tainted. You don't have every single person in the United States of America on YouTube following this case. Basically, you are looking at the people who do follow this case, so you are getting a biased view of how much attention the case is getting. But trust me, you are going to get people who go in for jury selection who probably have heard nothing about this case since Maddie was found, because they don't follow true crime on YouTube. They don't listen to podcasts. They don't go on Reddit. They don't follow Maddie's page on Facebook. I think there's, I'm only guessing because I haven't looked for a while, but I think there's probably only about 5,000 people on the Maddie page on Facebook. The Reddit posts are infrequent. Most of us don't even bother looking at that. Views for Maddie's stuff on YouTube, yes, when you have someone like Grizzly who is talking about it, then you do get tens of thousands of views. But she only talks about it when there's new documents and stuff released. Those of us who are basically talking about it more often, top views for some of the other creators are maybe 5,000 views. I don't know what the population of Florida is, but I'm pretty certain that it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. And the minute they do hear about it, they're going to go in, and even though they're not supposed to, they're going to go in and check the internet, and they're going to see these things. They're going to believe this stuff because they don't know the difference between truth and non-truth.
Fact and fiction.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, if I go in and say, you people are idiots. You know this never happened, and I can't do that because it won't do you good.
Okay, I'm sitting here thinking, please, 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 let the prosecution play that clip for the jury. Because wow, let's just insult potential jurors and tell them they're a bunch of idiots. Wow. You can see what her push is going to be after he has been convicted. She's going to blame the jury. She's going to say the jurors were all a bunch of imbeciles. Now, can we acknowledge that any case like this, the judge is going to seriously admonish the jury from day one about following the case outside of the courtroom? And in actual fact, given how high profile this case is, and I don't know if they do it in Florida, but if they do, I wouldn't be surprised if we have another situation like Delphi where the jurors are seconded throughout the case. Because this is going to get a heck of a lot of attention when it does go to trial. I think they are going to be wanting to protect the jurors as much as possible, and possibly even protect their identities as much as possible. I mean, we've seen the nastiness that occurred after the Delphi trial. Admittedly, that's a different kind of insanity. But to turn around and say that these jurors are all going to sit in court, then go home and then hop on the internet and research the case. No. Because they're going to have a panel of jurors who are going to take this job seriously. I'm pretty certain that they are going to be admonished from the very beginning. They are going to be made to understand just how serious this case is and just how important their job is.
You don't want to engage with it.
So, no, don't want to give them. They're not worthy of the merit of any comments, and they can just enjoy themselves. And then when the truth comes out, then they'll have to do a lot of backtracking. Yeah, right. Okay, sure. But anyway,
when the truth comes out, as in when the rest of the documents are released and we all get to read that 1,000-page document, the 500-page document, the multitude of single reports that were released, all the interviews that were made with Stefan and Jen, all the data which shows quite clearly that Stefan was guilty. You mean when all that stuff comes out? Because you know what? All that stuff is out now, and do you hear us saying, oh, we were wrong, Stefan is innocent? No. What you hear us saying now is, well, this proves Stefan is guilty. And as for the interviews with Stefan's parents, well, I have a lot of questions for his parents.
I will tell you this, Stefan. You know that we're saved people. You know that we're Christians, and you know that these people came to us many times for help in their living situations, and you know that we helped all of them. I don't understand why these kids think it's so wonderful to jump on this bandwagon and crucify us when we were there for them when they needed us. I don't understand that.
Well, it's because we have fallings out for various reasons, and they can't resist the temptation to kick me while I'm down because they think they can do it with impunity.
They've well and truly moved on in the conversation, and Deb is still going back to Stefan's friends, saying they came to us for help and we helped them, and look what they've done in return. Well, okay, why are they all painting you in the same light? Do you think they all got together and said, let's all make Chris and Deb Stearns look really, really bad? Let's all talk about Stefan and tell people what a real monster he is. No, these are people who came forward on their own, individually. Honestly. And as for kicking a person while they're down, dude, you wait. This is not kicking a person when they're down. Wait till after you have been convicted, and the first moment that another prisoner actually gets access to you. Then I think you're going to understand the meaning of kicking a person while they're down.
Absolutely.
They didn't have the balls to
Not
do
to
it
make
when it
people
was
happy
free.
and use what to do.
What's that?
So they didn't have the balls to do it while it was free.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they were jealous. You know who was always the one with the little, very, very something on his back, the mouse.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
always so jealous of you. He was so jealous of you. And,
He sabotaged me at every turn. I mean, if you remember when I was working Quiznos, I was in line for management, so he started working there. Then suddenly everyone's attitude towards me changed, and he became the manager.
I literally snorted when I heard him say that. He was in line for management, and his friend started working there, and suddenly everyone liked him better, and he became manager. In your dreams, were you ever in line for management? What a loser! How delusional can you be? This is such narcissistic gaslighting behaviour. This tells me that these former friends have hit a nerve big time. If the things they were saying weren't truthful, they would be laughed off. But no, what are they doing here? They're gaslighting them. Oh, they were always jealous of me. They were always so petty. You know, this particular friend, well, you know, I would have been a manager at Quiznos or whatever it's called. But he ruined it all for me, and he came in and took my job. Oh my gosh. Seriously? It's just insane. Like, oh my gosh, I don't believe the mindset of these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, that's what he does.
And, you know,
He's
there were
sneaky.
people in our friends group who, for some reason, were under the impression that I was a complete moron.
Well, they should check your IQ score.
Well, I know he was backstabbing and trying to put himself above me at every opportunity.
Yeah.
Found
That's
out
because he
a
couldn't do
while
it on
back
his
that he was
own.
even stealing my possessions and selling them.
Oh my gosh, are you serious? He's basically, this is the ultimate form of gaslighting. Turning around and saying that it was actually that other person doing the things that you were doing. Because we know that Stefan was stealing things from his parents and selling them. As far as we know, he sold his father's Rolex watch, which has not been discovered. And he's coming up with all these accusations against his former friends that are all the things we've heard from so many people that are actually about Stefan. So clearly, these friends have definitely hit a nerve, and what they're saying is clearly quite accurate, because it's got these three just in a complete utter tiz. You know, they were very, very quick to disregard the fake flatmate. They laughed that off so quickly and forgot about her immediately. But now they've gone back to Stefan's actual friends, and Stefan is going out of his way to gaslight them. And, I mean, so's Deb and Chris. What does that tell you? That tells you that a lot of what we've heard from these former friends must be pretty damn bloody accurate.
Like what?
Airsoft guns. I mean, my street board went missing. A lot of my
Yeah,
Pokemon
dude.
cards went missing. There's a one missing.
What are you talking about when you got the roommates? He was stealing your stuff and selling it?
Yep.
Well, no surprise.
No,
I believe that.
he needed to support his lifestyle somehow, and did the same thing with his parents' crap too. So.
Oh my gosh, seriously. I wonder if this former flatmate is listening to this. Now I know that, yes, one of them certainly was a bit sketchy and sounded like he was a serious druggie. And this is probably the person that Stefan is referring to. I've actually looked him up and seen photos of him, and he looks like he's still a bit on the sus side. But can we acknowledge what Stefan has just said here? He's claiming this flatmate has stolen all stuff from Stefan, and he even stole from his parents too. Where did we hear that before? Is Stefan projecting? Is he basically gaslighting the friend and admitting here, essentially through his gaslighting, that he was stealing from his friends and selling stuff so he could buy rugs for himself? Because that's the translation that I'm hearing in my head. We know Stefan liked his recreational activities. We know Stefan is a thief. So it's interesting that he is accusing this friend of these things.
Yeah.
What else?
I know he peddled his dad's pills.
Yeah, he was a first class citizen. We all know that, which is why he got kicked out of his house.
Yep. And
Yeah.
anyway, I'm going to call you back in 15 minutes if I can, because we got the 1 minute warning.
All right, later.
All right, bye.
Did you catch that very quick comment in the background from Deb about his friend selling his dad's pills? Wow. How would she know that this kid that supposedly lived with them was selling his own dad's pills, given that the story we heard was that his dad lived in another state? I wonder who it was that was selling his dad's pills. Because I'd say it wasn't this flatmate. And yeah, it rings true with her saying we threw him out of the house. Is that like when you basically paid an airfare for him to go back and send him back to live with his father? Or is this a different friend? Did you pay him off as well to move out of the house? I would love to hear responses now from these former friends of Stern's. I'd love to hear their responses to what these people have just said here. But it now makes me question, was Stefan stealing his own parents' medication and selling it for money?
Hello, you have a call at no expense to you from
Stefan Stearns.
an inmate at
Osceola County Corrections.
This call will be recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking.
Hey, sweetie.
Hey, I'm back.
Yay.
So, spent the last 15 minutes thinking about these yahoos.
They aren't worth the time.
Can't believe that. Just
Well, that's true.
for all of them that they would try to do this crap.
You know, these are the same ones that came to you for help and were always saying what a good friend you were, and you would keep all their secrets for them and stuff. But yet they don't have any secrets of yours, but they'll make them up just so that they can make themselves sound big on YouTube. You know.
Wow. The pair of them are just so butthurt about the comments from these friends. And like I said, oh, that's my dog chewing biscuits in the background, by the way. Like I said, if the comments were so wrong and untrue, they would have just laughed them off. But they're getting so wound up about them. I mean, okay, yeah, I said one of these characters, I did look him up, and he does seem like he's probably still into the recreational stuff. So, but that doesn't mean that his stories aren't truthful. In fact, it makes it more credible, this story of her buying him an airfare and shipping him back off to live with his father. Because I suspect that him and Stefan together probably were getting into a lot of recreational stuff together and probably weren't doing Boy Scout kind of stuff. But, I mean, grow a brain, the pair of you. Like, hello, you're going to hear a lot more worse things than what these guys are saying long before this is all over.
Yep.
It's a sad situation when people are that desperate for attention.
Yep.
Especially when Sir Lancelot was the one going to community college to learn how to be a computer programmer, and he's the only one who could have set up a network if there ever was one, so.
Well, I think that's the whole point, wasn't it? That this guy did set up a network at home, and that Stefan hid the stuff in a combined file. This woman has, on one hand, in the last phone call, she claimed about how Stefan had a genius IQ. And now she's saying, oh, but he wouldn't know how to do this. BS. And you know what? You can put this friend of his down for going to community college, but what college did Stefan go to? Oh, yeah, that's right. He didn't go to college. Yeah. So who's the loser out of those two? Just because one person created the network doesn't mean that the other person didn't access it. We know from just looking at the various things that Stefan was into that he was actually quite tech savvy, as apparently was Chris, which is often the case in families where you have one parent who is like really tech savvy and the interest rubs off on the children. So don't make these claims that your son, who you claim is a genius, couldn't possibly have figured out how to hide videos on a server that was a shared server.
Forget that. That's bullshit.
I'm
You
sure
know, he did it if Levi did it.
paid for information and decided he would make some stuff up and get paid on my account.
He was making stuff up and getting what on Stefan's account? I thought he said paid, but maybe I misheard. Interesting, because this friend never mentioned anything about things being on Stefan's account. And it sounds like Stefan is trying to just get out ahead of the pack here before someone mentions things that were on Stefan's account that shouldn't have been there. Is he now going to say that this friend was actually accessing Stefan's Google Drive? Like, you know, in the last 7 years, and this friend actually put all that stuff on Stefan's Google Drive? Is that going to be his defence? Because it seems highly unlikely, given what Stefan has been arrested for, all the charges against him, that the story coming from the friend about stuff on a common drive, which had been filmed by Stefan and put there by Stefan, was actually filmed and put there by that friend. Why would they do that, and why would they admit to doing that? Like, yeah, use your common sense, Stefan. You're not arguing anything here that is going to convince people. Not in the slightest.
Yep.
Whoever paid him ought to get a refund because he fleeced them.
They don't care. Do you know how much money they made off of it? To have all this this purulent information on you to have people click on. These people are vultures. They're worse than that.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't wait till you're dead to feed on you.
Yeah. Well.
Does this woman even click in her head? Basically, is she making the connection with what her son has done? She's accusing YouTubers of being vultures just because they talk about Stephen Stearns. Well, he is one of the worst monsters that I have come across in the time that I've been covering true crime. In the time that I've been following true crime, because I've been following it for much, much longer. He's a monster. And yes, people are going to talk about it. Like I said, people are just trying to wrap their head around how someone could be that horrible, how someone could be that depraved. And yes, sadly, there are some people who are grifting when it comes to Maddie's case, but it's not every YouTuber. The majority of YouTubers who are covering Maddie's case are doing it because we want Maddie's story to be heard. We want people to know what happened to Maddie so that hopefully changes can be made and just maybe one child in the future can be saved from this experience. We don't give a rat's ass about whether or not Stephen is upset by us talking about him. And you know what? If we get a little bit of monetary compensation for spending 4 or 5 hours a day working on videos, sharing Maddie's story and letting people know what Stephen did, well, why not? People go to work. They don't get criticised for being paid for doing their jobs. YouTubers are providing a service. Like I said, there are some grifters, but there are some people who work their butts off to bring solid information to their subscribers. There are people who spend a fortune, like Paula and, I can't think of his name, the guy from the docket. They've spent a fortune on FOIA requests so that the rest of us have things like these phone calls that we can discuss and we can share with our subscribers. So why shouldn't they, in return, earn some money back for their work? I mean, heck, the only reason I released the video this morning that was the uninterrupted phone calls, I said, I think in yesterday's video, that I was going to wait a few days because basically Paula had put it on Patreon and I felt it was fair that if people wanted the uninterrupted audio that they could go over to Paula's Patreon and buy it. And I know some people can't afford I don't know what it is in US dollars, but for me it was $40 Australian. I know some people can't afford that, but they could wait. But, you know, I wanted to do the right thing and throw a bit of money Paula's way because she has spent a fortune on this case. The only reason I didn't hold off putting that video out is because other creators have bought the audio from Paula and now even put it on their own Patreon, which I'll just tell you now, I won't be putting any of this audio on my Patreon because it doesn't feel right to me when Paula has been the one that's gone and got this audio for me to then make money off it in that way. Even though my Patreon is free, what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is Paula deserves the money that she gets for it. Whether it is from the views, whether it is from people going into Patreon, purchasing her content. I don't begrudge her any of that, and these people need to understand that not everyone is a YouTube grifter. These are people who are doing it for genuine reasons.
Anyway, how are you doing?
Well, I'm hanging in there. Keeping up as best as I can. Did a little bit of exercise today.
Good.
Push-ups, crunches, squats, leg lifts, whatever.
I hate hearing him say stuff like, oh, I'm hanging in there. Well, you're going to have to hang in there for a bloody long time, mate. But then even when he's talking about doing exercises, he makes it sound like it's just so traumatic for him.
Whatever you can do.
Well, see if you can ask somebody about the book order and see, I don't know how long it takes to have these items delivered, but I don't know. We haven't gotten any indications that they've been returned, so they're in the system, so I don't know how long it takes for you to get them.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any indication that they've been returned either, so still waiting to hear on that. But been praying a lot.
I can't decide whether I think that Chris and Deb are just stingy, money-obsessed people, or if they are perhaps semi-retired and trying to not spend too much money because they want to be able to live comfortably. And so that is why they are so concerned about the books. Because it seems to be something that they are very, very, very concerned about. Stefan seems to be not so worried, other than just like, oh, the books aren't here yet. But they seem to really harp on it, so I wonder if... Now, we know in an earlier phone call, they did mention that they were hard up for cash for that month. And I guess it comes down to, if Chris is in real estate, probably that's their main income. And if he's not selling anything, then that's definitely going to make them struggle. But at the same time, I can also see them as being the kind of people that are perhaps a little bit stingy with their money. So it could be either way. But honestly, is anyone else sick of hearing about these damn books? And then, talking with the books, Stefan just casually throws in the same breath, I've been praying. Well, I don't know what sort of prayers you're saying, Stefan, because you should be praying for your soul, and you should actually be admitting to what you did. It really bothers me when I hear these people who claim Christianity, Stephen Stearns, Richard Allen, claiming Christianity, but they won't cop up to what they've done. How can you claim to be a Christian? We'll just go with Stephen Stearns for now. How can he claim that he's praying and give this impression that he's, so religious when he won't admit any of this? He wants to blame it on Jen. He wants to blame it on Maddie. Even when his former friends come forward, he wants to flip it on its ass and basically put it all back on them. They're horrible people. They're victimising him. He's such a good person and they're making him out to be so bad.
Good. He hears you. God hears your prayer.
We've been praying for deliverance as well, but I don't know.
You're kidding me, right? First of all, she's delusional. God hears your prayer. Well, yeah, maybe he probably does hear your prayers, but he's not going to do anything about it because you've got a lot of fixing to do. Praying for deliverance, that ain't going to happen. There's no such thing as deliverance for people who are guilty. I can't believe that he is pulling this whole religion thing. It's clearly to appease his mother. It's clearly to give his parents the impression that he is innocent. But it is pathetic.
Proverbs shows you how to live. Romans shows you how God forgives. So
How
those
is
are the
it
two
that
I would
this
look at.
woman wants to blame everyone but Stearns? She's trying to blame Jen. She's trying to blame Maddie. She's saying all these things that make it sound like she doesn't for one moment believe that Stearns did it. But then she's telling him to read Proverbs and Romans and saying, because Romans tells you how God forgives. Well, right there, that message is you need forgiveness. So here she's saying that Stefan needs forgiveness for something, which to me says that while on the surface she's claiming that she doesn't believe he's got anything to do with this, he's her innocent little golden boy, on a different level she does believe. And she thinks he needs to be asking for forgiveness. So why be such a hypocrite? Yeah, the pup has got something to chew. I'm not going to take it off him. That's what the noise is in the background. Why be such a hypocrite? Why protest about his innocence? And then, when you're starting to talk religion, tell him to essentially pray for forgiveness, because that's what she's doing there.
I've been praying to him to deliver me from all this and give me a chance to get my life back on track, but there might be some kind of slim chance, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to jinx anything or get anybody's
Now,
hopes
I
up.
can appreciate how hard it would have to be for parents to have your child in this situation. But here he is saying that he's praying that he can be delivered from this situation and that there's a slim chance, basically, of him getting out of this. But he doesn't want to jinx it. There's nothing to jinx, mate. Sorry, but you're not getting out of this one. You want to know how divine intervention works? That man that drove past as you were changing the tyre of your car, or after you had just changed the tyre of your car, that was divine intervention. That was the universe or some higher power going, Maddie's not going to stay out here for heaven knows how many years before she is found. We're going to make sure that she is found immediately and that you are put away for good or that you fry. That's divine intervention. There is no chance whatsoever of you ever getting out, you moron.
But I'm going to try. It's worth a try anyway.
Well, they need to get her out of the hospital where she can be interviewed by the police. They need to bring all her family in, all those bitches.
Let's see your true colours here, Deb. Referring to, now I don't know if she means Jen's family or the frat mates, but all those bitches. I do agree that Jen needs to be questioned some more, but I don't think that what Jen has to say is going to lead to Stefan's freedom. If Jen is questioned more, then yes, it's probably going to find her incarcerated, but it's not going to get Stefan off the hook. at the end of the day, he's the one responsible for Maddie's death. He's admitted it now several times. Not directly, but you have the letter that he wrote. You have the comments to his parents in the previous phone call when he talked about you just know when someone's ghost leaves their body. Well, that says he was there the moment Maddie passed. So, sure, Jen needs to be looked at, but don't try and use her as a scapegoat. You need to admit that your son did this to Maddie. Stop trying to blame everyone else and maybe encourage him to accept responsibility for his actions.
They were sitting there at the grandmother's house calling 911 and being ugly to the 911 operators. They already knew what had happened. They all knew. And none of them were acting scared. None of them were acting concerned. They were talking like we're talking now. Like there wasn't really anything big going on.
Yeah, right, because Yolanda was comforting Stephanie because you could see the anxiety on every single member of that family except for Jen. Yeah, Stephen pretended to be concerned, but that was so blatantly clear that he was trying to act. But honestly, to turn around and accuse Jen's family of knowing that Maddie was unalived, that's a low blow. That is a really low blow. Particularly when you look at all the things which point to the fact that Deb and Chris appear to have helped Stephen out in between when Maddie went missing and when Stephen was arrested. And I think we can see now why. Because it seems, what I've said all along, it seems as if Stephen probably has given them some half-baked story where he's a victim in all this. Deb, who is so delusional, believes that her son's not capable of doing anything evil. So they jumped in to help. And yet they are, without any evidence, accusing Jen's family of having knowledge of Maddie being unalived. Sure, you could question whether or not they knew what was going on in that house. And if they knew what was going on in that house, why they never said anything. But you know what? You know who admitted that they knew what was going on in that house and never did anything about it? Bingo, Deb Stearns. She knew that Maddie was co-sleeping with Jen and Stephen. And she never said a word. So it's really, really rich for her to turn around and start making accusations about Jen's family.
Well, I wouldn't get so carried away with any conspiracy theories.
You don't have to be a conspiracy theory to see the writing on the wall.
For heaven's sake, can't this guy learn to speak in a normal voice? It just drives me nuts. I have no idea what that mumbling was. Something about securities and conspiracy theories. He won't get securities from conspiracy theories or something? I don't know. Speak up and speak like a man, for heaven's sake. And she's like, well, you know, the writing's on the wall. No, Deb, in your mind. Because, yes, we can question if the family knew that Stephen was sleeping with Maddie. But there's nothing in any of the interviews that would indicate that they knew that Maddie was no longer around. In fact, if you watch the interviews with Stephanie and Juan, there's no way that they thought Maddie was gone or that anything had happened to her.
At any rate, that's probably not going to help me anyway. So.
Well, don't give up anything. Don't give up on anything.
Well, I'm not. I'm holding on to hope until there's nothing left to hold on
Where's
to.
Chris during this whole conversation? Has he gone to bed or something? Now, seriously, Stefan says, oh, it's probably not going to help me in any way. Too right, because you know what? Accusing other people of it isn't going to get you off. You are the main suspect here. Maybe Jen played a part, but that's not going to stop you from frying. And just trying to blame anyone and everyone? Wow, this Deborah Stearns is a piece of work, isn't she? And she should be. Look, a decent person should be helping their son to accept responsibility. Someone needs to explain to these people that if he keeps denying it and that it does go to trial, he's going to fry. There's pretty much a 99% chance that that's going to happen. So you continuing to enable him and say, don't give up on anything, you're not helping him at all. You need to actually be frank with him and point out you're actually in a heck of a lot of trouble. This is real. But the pair of them are off in their own little dream world together.
Well, when you get to the end of the rope, you tie a knot in it and still hang on.
Oh, you know, when I first got here, I was praying to God for strength and serenity, and, you know, He's given me that. Especially lately, I've noticed I've just been overcome by an overwhelming sense of calm and serenity.
Yeah, that's probably because the drugs are finally out of your system, moron. But honestly, to be saying that he has this sense of calm and serenity, I hope not. He needs to be reminded on a daily basis of what he's done. If he is feeling a sense of calm and serenity, to me that says he's basically off in his own little bubble and blocking out the fact that he has done this to Maddie. He's not accepting responsibility for it. Because he should be feeling guilt. He should be feeling remorse. He should actually be feeling some sadness over Maddie's death. This is only 3 months after Maddie died. If he was innocent, he should still be grieving. There certainly wouldn't be a sense of calm and serenity.
Well, good.
He's working on you. I pray for every day. I pray for him to put fences of protection around you and to hear you calling him.
Well, I have been, and thank Him for granting me that serenity. You know, I've just been thinking about, you know, how He works, you know, how He uses hardship as a vehicle to move you.
Yeah.
You know, human
This guy is so manipulative. I have no doubt whatsoever that all this religious BS is simply there to manipulate Deb. To him, the best way of convincing her that he's innocent is to spout all this religious crap. No, I'm not saying that religion is crap, but you know what I mean, to spout it like he believes in it. He is manipulating her And despite her herself being pretty much a master manipulator, it's that confirmation bias, isn't it? She wants to believe that he's innocent. She wants to believe that he's Mr. Ultra-religious. So it suits her to believe all this stuff that he's telling her right now. But let's be realistic, this guy's not remotely religious.
I was in the kitchen making sandwiches, and I started laughing in the kitchen because we were talking about all these people saying stuff, about networks being set up and videos and blackmail and an envelope full of cash. And I'm thinking, damn, they've been watching some movies, haven't they?
I know, I was thinking that too. It sounds like a bad spy movie.
I am so sick of hearing this from her. She is dead set wanting to disprove this stuff that was said about her. It's really got her upset. And now she's saying, oh, they're watching movies. It must be they're watching these spy movies. No. You're going to say they're all watching the same movies now? Yeah, there was a mass screening of a show that gave the story for what all of these people have said. No, Deb. When I hear people giving pretty much identical stories, then it gives those stories a fair amount of credibility.
I know.
If you came to the house to pay them off, why would you have bothered putting the cash in a manila envelope if you were going to be inside the house?
Who knows? But
So
then the other one is that I went to a restaurant and slid it across the table to them.
I know. Like, what is that? Why not both payments at the house? Wouldn't that have made more sense?
Well, none of it makes sense, and I keep telling Chris, I said, why can't I just offer to go take a lie detector test and put all this to bed? But
And if you're going to bring a large wad of cash, why would you take it out of the bank envelope to put it into a big manila envelope just to take it inside to a house and hand it to somebody?
Okay, so when someone is trying to disprove a story like that, and for starters, they are just overdoing it, they've got something to hide. But here he is talking about how this money would have been in a bank envelope, and why would you take it out of that to put it in a manila envelope? Well, like I said, I don't think I heard this person say anything about a manila envelope. So that seems to have been her insertion. And they just seem to be objecting far too much to this one specific part of the story. And they seem to have the details stuck in their heads. The restaurant thing, I don't recall hearing that. Maybe I've missed it. Let me know if I did. But again, they are just protesting far too much about this.
why would I give it to those wads of bubble gum anyway? They have the mental capacity of a 2-year-old.
He was a terrible liar anyway. He lied about big things. He lied about little things. He lied to women all the time. He lied just to, make himself seem cooler or maybe gain more acceptance. But he just lied. He was one of those people that lied for no reason.
It really does my head in when I hear someone gaslighting another person giving a full-on accurate description of themselves. I think Stefan did lie quite often to make himself sound cool, based on what we've heard from his former friends. We know that Stefan lied all the time, and yet he's turning around and accusing this friend of all this, rather than copying it as his own.
It's like, buddy, you don't have to lie. Like, we already like you. You're already our friend. There's no need to lie or build yourself up, you know?
Because they're a habitual liar, and it's hard when you're a liar to keep the truth straight because you change it every time you tell somebody
And
something.
you know what? We've seen examples of both Deb and Stefan doing precisely that. We know that Stefan is a habitual liar. So how hilarious is it that they're basically putting this on Stefan's friends? I can't with these people.
I don't know. I just used to laugh it off and dismiss it. But
Yeah, well, it's weird. Just some weird. They're so weird. I don't know.
yeah. Whatever. He was probably counting his money, walking away laughing, saying, thank you, Stefan.
Yeah, probably.
They just have to believe this notion that they've got, that these people that came forward were paid for coming forward. Seriously? Maybe if they were talking to Fox News, we know that some news stations will pay people for their stories. YouTubers? Not as far as I know. And like I said, of all the YouTubers out there, Gray Hughes, who was the one who had these guys on his channel, is really not likely to pay anyone to come on his channel. And I think someone said that one of these guys also did an interview with Jays for Justice. Well, she's a straight up good person, and she's not going to be paying anyone to go on her channel and do interviews. So I know this is them just basically trying to once again make themselves look like the good guys here, and trying to give the impression that these people wouldn't bother coming forward and saying all this horrible stuff. Sorry, making up all this horrible stuff about Stefan unless they were paid to do so. Like, no. You have all these people out here who are so horrified by what happened to Maddie that they need to figure it out in their head. You know, if you know someone who does something this hideous, you do need to figure out these things in your head. You question, how did I never see this in this person? You question, was there something I could have done to prevent all this? That's why people come forward in cases like this, if they are genuine. Then, of course, you get the people that come forward just to hear themselves on someone's channel, and they have nothing to do with the case, but they want to get attention. But paid? Come on, get real. I mean, most YouTubers wouldn't earn enough money to pay someone to come on their channel. Sure, Gray Hughes probably makes a couple of $100 per video. So, what, he offered this guy $100 to come on and do an interview? Like, that's hardly motivation, is it?
These people have they don't have a moral compass. They have no conscience. They have nothing redeeming about them. I'm sure God can find something, but he's going to have to dig.
Well,
and I don't think they're looking to him for anything anyway. So
they definitely didn't have any honor or integrity. It's one of the reasons I ended up cutting them out of my life.
Yeah, Deb, can we talk about people who have no moral compass? Because right now you are essentially condoning what your son did by not turning around and actually pointing out to him that he needs to actually admit what he did. You're pretty much condoning it. And how hilarious is it? Stefan saying, that's why I've cut them out of my life. I'm pretty certain none of these guys would want to have anything to do with you now, Stefan. It's my understanding that your phone calls have pretty much only been your parents.
Just took me too long to do it. Back to what I was saying, I was thinking about, how God uses hardship as a vehicle to move people.
Right.
Human nature being what it is, even if we're not where we're supposed to be in life, we'll stay there if we're comfortable enough. We won't be changes, and so God uses hardship as motivation and a vehicle to move us to where we need to be in life.
He used police officers and detectives to move you to where you need to be in life.
You know what he did with me and Dinky?
Yeah.
I remember standing in that pasture over his body, flipping God off and telling him how much I hated him, but that was the reason that I got saved. Because I lost Dinky.
Well, all this happened and, passed away, and that immediately brought me back to God. That was the first thing I did, was begged God to take me and
please tell me I've just
her.
misinterpreted this. Okay, I don't know who Dinky is or whatever she said, but sounds like Deb Stearns is saying that someone's death brought her to God. But what did he just say? Because he was saying that after what happened to Maddie occurred, that brought him back to God, supposedly. But who the heck is he talking about when he says, I said, thank you, God, for taking me in instead of her? What? Just what? Is he saying he's thankful that Maddie died, not him? Or is he saying that I can't wrap my head around it, but I want to choke this guy right now. Even if he's not talking about Maddie, who would want to say, basically be thinking, well, I'm glad God took me in instead of her? Wouldn't you be saying, well, I'm thankful that God took me in and I hope that he takes her in at some point in time too? But no, it's all about Stefan. Stefan comes first. And someone please tell me that I have misheard this. Is he talking about this Dinky person? Or is he talking about Maddie? It sounds to me like he's talking about Maddie, because he's saying straight after this happened that he basically went back to God or whatever. And after saying that, he says that he thanks God for taking him in instead of her. Unless he's talking about Jen. But I can't fathom what I've just heard. I can't make sense of what's just been said.
Well, everybody who loves somebody will do that. So.
I haven't stopped praying.
No. Nope. If you love somebody, you would rather take their pain than have them have it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I would have died for her.
He is actually talking about Maddie. This conversation is continuing. And he's saying, I would have died for her. This is definitely talking about Maddie. You are going to die for her. You mongrel. And you're going to die in the worst possible way. And you deserve that. But she should never have died. She died at your hands. How dare he? You know, on one hand, doing these raw without having listened to them first, you get to hear my reactions straight up. But I apologise for my language. I'm shocked. I'm disgusted. I'm shocked. I'm heartbroken. I'm actually on the verge of tears. How can... The guy is a monster. He is an evil monster. And she's sitting here having this conversation with him and going along with what he's saying. And what the heck is Chris doing in the background? Nothing. Both these parents are pieces of crap, basically. How dare they sit by and enable him? How dare they sit by and let him say these things about this precious little 13-year-old girl and not pull him up on it?
But, I told God, I said, I see what you did. You immediately brought me back to you, and that I had strayed for a long time, and, message received. My eyes are open. I just wish it didn't have such a high price attached to it.
Bullshit, Stephen Stearns.
I don't know.
God doesn't want you. You're not under his protection. And he sure as well wouldn't have sacrificed Maddie for the sake of your soul. You sold your soul. It's got nothing to do with trading Maddie for you. And how dare you even suggest that? Honestly, if this guy doesn't plead out, I hope he does make it to trial. But I tell you what, after he's convicted, I don't care what happens to him in jail. And I'm the sort of person that doesn't like to see people injured. Although I will be honest, I do periodically do searches for Paul Flores, who's the guy responsible for unaliving Kristen Smart, because he's so far had 2 attacks on him in jail, because her family is still looking for her body nearly 30 years on. So while I'm not delighted to hear of him being harmed in jail, there is a sense of justice when it occurs. And I tell you what, Stephen Stearns deserves some of that justice too.
Sometimes you have to look at why it was taken, and it was her time. God knows what's going to happen to you when you're born. He knows every moment of your life is coming.
So I actually just had to go and take a break, because the things that I want to say about this woman right now can't be said on YouTube. How dare she? It was her time. No, Deb Stearns, you are a piece of crap. It was not Maddie's time. Maddie had an incredible legacy to give the world. From what we hear, she was a caring young girl. She loved singing. She had a legacy. She was 13. There was so much more ahead of her. And your son took all that away from her. It wasn't her time. And to say that, that's basically Deb Stern's way of excusing Stefan. Let's not blame Stefan. Let's blame everything else we can. Let's blame the universe. She's only just stopped short of saying, well, if Stefan didn't do it, someone else would have done it because it was her time. She was meant to die right then and there. So, if there was any doubt before as to why Stefan turned out the way he did, we really don't have to look far, do we? That woman has a dark soul. She claims to be a Christian, but she has a dark soul.
I know he has a plan, and every day I've been reaffirming to myself and reassuring myself that I have to be patient and maintain my faith, and have faith that he has a plan for me, whatever it may be, and it will be revealed in time. And that all
I hope so.
is be patient and maintain my faith in him.
I really
and trust.
find it hard to stomach this coming from him. He has to maintain his faith that he has a plan for me. He probably has a plan for you. Eternal damnation. Does he actually believe that deciding to pray to God is going to get him off for what he did? If he actually believes that, the guy is delusional and needs to actually maybe, I don't know if they have church services in prison, but, you know, I think he definitely needs to speak to a priest or a minister or something, because the guy's got no idea. The pair of them together, I don't know what's in their Kool-Aid, but oh my God, like, mental health problems for both of them, clearly. But not the sort of mental health problems that would get him off this charge. He is narcissistic, he is delusional, and she sounds like she's exactly the same.
Well, you got to trust him. You got to maintain your sanity. You got to maintain your cool. And like Xavier told me, when he was in jail, the only thing that saved him was trying to keep a sense of humor about the situation, even though it was terrible.
No, because if you were to show
honest.
any sense of having a sense of humour, it would diminish the amount of sympathy that you would get for your parents. It's far easier for you to play the victim, be all sad and sorry, and talk about how you've found God and you trust that God is going to get you through all this. Because that is going to manipulate your parents far better than you showing any sort of sense of humour about it. You know what? There's nothing funny about it anyway, Stefan. You know, I am going to push on and do the third of these phone calls from this particular evening, but I'll tell you what, you have no idea how many breaks I've been taking while I've been working on this, because it is just doing my head in. I can't fathom how people can even be like this.
A very large part of me died when she did.
Well,
I'm not the same person anymore, and I don't think I ever will be. There's some wounds that just don't ever
He's
heal.
painting himself as the victim here. A very large part of me died when she died. you know, I do believe that on some level he was, I wouldn't say in love, but obsessed with Maddie. And yeah, probably a large part of him did die when she died, because something that has been important to him his whole life is now denied from him. Those activities are never going to occur again for you, Stefan. Sucks to be you. But to paint himself as the victim here, that he's never going to recover, well, good, because Maddie's never coming back. You did that. You need to suffer for that for the rest of your life. Where's the remorse? There's none whatsoever. It's all still all about Stefan. It's just so shameful. And why isn't Chris chiming in at this point and pointing out to him that, hey, you did this? Why is Chris not part of this conversation? I've heard him a few times. Was he just letting them go? Is that why Stefan turned out the way he did? Because Chris was a bit like Jen. I just let them do what they do. It sounds like he's just sitting back and letting Stefan and Deb have this little fantasy between them without adding in the voice of reason.
Well, I'm assuming that they are treating you for PTSD because you found the body.
Honestly,
not
this
to
woman
mention
claims to be
everything
intelligent.
else that went along with that.
Does she really believe that story? And is this the reason why they jumped to help him after Maddie went missing? Because he contacted them and said, this is what happened? We know he rang Chris after he had the flat tyre in his vehicle. Did he ring Chris and say, I panicked because I found Maddie unalive and I took her and hid the body because I was afraid they were going to blame me? Is that why Chris and Deb sprung to action? Because she seems convinced that Stefan did nothing. That Stefan wasn't even in the room, but he just discovered Maddie's body. Get a brain, Deborah Stearns. You can't seriously believe that. And what good does it do for you to encourage him in his fantasy? I get that you've done that for 38 years. But now's the time to turn around and actually grow a pair and act like a decent parent and help your son to accept responsibility for what he did, instead of going on about how he needs counselling for PTSD. You've got to be kidding me.
No, not treating me for anything except my blood pressure.
Well, they need to do the PTSD because you're not sleeping.
Well, you know, it's just, I keep telling myself that I have to maintain my faith. Without faith and trust in God, I have nothing, and therefore I'm keeping that, you know?
Well, just remember that not everybody knows who God is, and not everybody who's walking around is not a demon.
This pair has a really skewed idea of who God is. Oh my God. Like, sorry, I try not to use profanity like that, but I'm just speechless. This woman is delusional. And she is encouraging his delusions as well. Honest to goodness, they're both on the same Kool-Aid.
I keep telling God that I trust you and I have faith in you. Please deliver me from this. Please deliver me from the people who are trying to destroy me. And I just want to see my parents again.
Well, we'd like to see you too. It's been awfully quiet without you.
How can you say that with the dogs?
What?
Wow.
I asked your mother, I said, how can she say it's been
Doesn't
quiet
want
with
to
the dogs?
accept any responsibility whatsoever. To him, this is about people who are trying to destroy him. Not about anything he's done. He's innocent. Poor little Stefan just wants to see his parents again. I just want to go home to Mummy and Daddy. Guess what, Stefan? It's not going to happen. If you're lucky, now, from what I hear, and I haven't had a chance to watch much of the docket lately, but it sounds like Deb and Chris aren't even talking to Stefan right now. So, dude, maybe if you're lucky, they might be there when you are put to death. And then you'll get to see them again. Maybe if you're lucky, they'll be there when you're in court. And you can look at them across the courtroom. And they can cry about how innocent you are. And how people are trying to destroy you. But you know what? In your dreams, mate. This guy has no remorse whatsoever. And I think this shows us that he's not going to cop a guilty plea at any point in the near future. He thinks he's spent his life lying his way out of everything. And Deb has backed him up the whole way. And now they think they can do the same again. It doesn't work that way. There is so much evidence that you are going down, dude. Your mother can't buy people off. You can't lie your way out of this one.
Yeah. Well, relatively, I guess. But,
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, nobody to say, hey, are you making ramen?
yeah, that ramen was a big hit, even with, I used to remember she would have such a mischievous little evil smile on her face when I made a fresh bowl of ramen, and she'd try a bite and then steal the rest of the bowl and walk away while staring evil
hearing
looks
them
and
talk
smiles
about
at me.
Maddie like that. Like, I get that there was some sort of relationship there, but it's like he's trying to paint it as all rosy. He couldn't possibly have done anything to Maddie because look how much he cared for her. That's all this is about. This is just more deflection. He's trying to give the impression that they had this deep relationship, that he could never possibly hurt her because they had such this deep relationship. And that his memories are full of all these little day-to-day things. Maybe they are, because maybe he's blocked out what he did to her. Maybe he's blocked out the sight of her sitting beside him in that car while he drove all around Kissimmee and Orlando. Maybe he's blocked out the sight of her lying in that ditch next to the bamboo. And it helps his delusion to come up with stories like this. Clearly, it helps her delusion as well. So they're sharing this delusion between them. Let's remember the good times with Maddie so that we can ignore what actually happened to her and try and believe that none of that had anything to do with Stefan.
I missed that.
Well,
Oh,
she was a very special child, and I wish this had not happened that way, and I wish a lot of things had not happened the way they happened, and you know what I'm talking about.
yep, me too.
So I don't understand that. I don't think there's ever anything that anybody could say to me that would make me understand that. So I'm not even going to go further than that into it, but just know that I don't care what you did. There is nothing that would make me hate you. There's nothing that would make me turn my back on you.
There is nothing that's going to make me hate you or turn my back on you. But at the same time, you can condemn your child's actions and say they were wrong. We know exactly what she's talking about here. She's saying she doesn't understand the CSAM stuff. She doesn't understand those things that he did to Maddie over all those years. Clearly she's accepted that occurred because, well, they've got all those images of it. And I also suspect that, well, I'm pretty certain that her and Chris saw what was on those USBs, that they claim they only saw file names which told them what was on them. Because you're not going to have 30,000 images on a USB and have file names for those images. They're all probably going to all just be IMG 3946 or something. So I have no doubt that they saw what was on that USB before it was handed over. So she is telling him here that she knows he did those things to Maddie over the years. But she's not condemning it. She's saying she doesn't understand it, but she's not condemning it, and she's saying that she still loves him. By choosing not to speak about it, by not speaking up and saying you did the wrong thing, that is pretty much condoning it. I know she hasn't outwardly come and said, look, I'm sorry, I don't blame you for doing it, I don't understand it. But she's not come out and said what you did was wrong. No, she just doesn't want to discuss it. She doesn't want to go there. She wants to stick her head in the sand and pretend that that part of it never happened. What does this tell you about this family? I bet this is what happened every time that he did something wrong. If there was irrefutable evidence of it, she would just ignore what happened. Because that's exactly what she's doing here. You know, he's talking about wanting to be free and see his parents again. And then she's talking about the CSAM stuff. We know that amongst those, there are DP charges. There are charges which will get him life. And it's going to be pretty hard for any defence team to get him off those charges. And yet she's happy to go along with this delusion that people are trying to destroy him and that there's a hope for him of getting out and seeing his parents again. Because let's ignore the facts of the situation. because they're far too inconvenient.
Well, I appreciate that, Mom. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, sweetheart.
And, I just going up for visits and bringing new snacks or new treats for her to try, or showing her new video games or card games and things like that. I miss that.
Oh, you got your 1 minute notice.
Yeah, there it is again. Well, I'll try to call back in another 15 minutes, but you know the deal. If you don't hear from me then, I'll try to call back in the next few days.
Okay, we'll catch up to you then.
Love you,
All
honey.
right. I love you too, and I'll try again in 15 minutes, okay?
He's focusing
Okay.
on
Okay.
what he's missing out on now. He misses all these things that he did with Maddie. Not once do you hear him say, I regret that I have now deprived her of the chance of ever having these experiences again. Because at the end of the day, it's all about him. I bet the main thing that he regrets is something that he's not going to tell his mother. All these little minuscule day-to-day things, sure, when someone's gone, you do regret those things. I'm sorry, the pup wants the bigger dogs to play with him, and they want a nap. I just can't stand hearing Stefan talk about Maddie like that. Like, what right does he have to be speaking like he's the victim here? He's heartbroken because he'll never get to experience these things with her again. Because it is. He's reflecting on what he's lost. He's not reflecting on what Maddie's lost. And it seems quite clear that Chris was in the background listening to all of this, but was too spineless to actually step in and try and be the voice of reason.
Hello, you have a call at no expense to you from
Stephen Stern.
This call will be recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking.
Hey,
Hi. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, just getting back to what I was saying, just faith and trust. And
You know what, Stefan? I have a message for you.
message received.
And it's got nothing to do with faith and trust.
I guess if there's one thing that we wish for is that you had come to us sooner. That you had come to us and let us know what was going on.
Well, unfortunately,
Did
I
you
was
catch
suffering
what Deb
from
just said
a bit
there?
of cowardice.
She wishes he had gone to them sooner. I wish you had come to us sooner. Meaning that he did, at some point in time, contact them about what he'd done. And it appears that the contact occurred after he got the flat tire and after he had already put Maddie amongst the bamboo. So, to me, her saying that she wishes he'd gone to them sooner is an outright admission that he did go to them about what happened, which confirms my suspicions that the whole Chris going to the hotel in the middle of the night and Stephen going down to Northport, all that they had a hand in that. She's basically admitted to it right then and there. Major bit of leakage from Deb Stearns. What does he say? He was suffering from cowardice. Yeah, a bit more than that, wasn't it? You were hoping you were going to get away with it. You spent a lifetime getting away with all sorts of stuff. And you thought you could deal with it and get away with it and not get caught. You only brought your parents into it when you suddenly realised, or when Jen suddenly realised, that they were looking at you. That they had questions because of your lies in your interviews. And that's when you went to your parents for help.
Yeah, but hindsight's always 20/20, and can't do anything about it now. But this thing
It's bigger because of it.
it's a bigger problem because of that. And again, not sure what would be any. I'm sure there would be some things different. If you had chosen that path, because there's obviously nothing we could have done without. Well, there's nothing we could have done. I mean, there was only one choice, but we could have talked our way through this.
Now, up until this point, everything I've heard from Chris to me has sounded like spin. Him basically trying to work the situation to basically make it look like they hadn't had any involvement, to make it look like they knew nothing. Had he come to us, we would have got out in front of this and got a lawyer. And now he's saying, after Deb said, we wish you'd come to us sooner, he's saying, it's a bigger problem because you didn't come to us. And we could have talked our way through it. Is he basically trying to say here that we could have helped you come up with a better alibi? Because saying we could have talked, you've made the problem bigger and we could have talked our way through it, to me implies that we would have figured out a way of making sure that you didn't get arrested. He's not saying we would have got you a lawyer and taken you in to speak to the police. No, we would have talked our way through it. Or maybe we would have talked our way out of it, is what you were thinking right there, Chris. This conversation is blowing my mind. There is some major leakage happening here from the parents. They are essentially admitting that they knew what he had done, and they wish he'd told them a little bit earlier so they could have helped him fix the situation.
I mean, the phone call that you made to me earlier in the afternoon, if you had at least shared that, we could have talked our way through that and figured out a much better solution than whatever whatever you guys came up with, because
holy crap!
None of that was believable.
Did you hear what he just said? He's talking about the phone call the afternoon after Stefan had the flat tire. And he's saying, we could have talked our way through it and come up with a better solution than whatever you guys came up with. I'm gobsmacked. This is a guilty admission. I don't know if he's forgotten that the call was being recorded, or if he thinks that people listening to the call aren't going to interpret what he was saying. But, oh my gosh, They've said to Stefan, you should have come to us sooner. The problem's bigger because you didn't come to us sooner. And now we could have talked our way through this and come up with a better solution than what you guys came up with. First of all, he's dumping Jen in it well and truly, saying that the whole story was concocted by the pair of them, which, to be honest, I believe it is. And starting to see the different parts of that narrative and figure out who owns what parts, who came up with what. But now, Chris is essentially saying, your alibi sucked, your story sucked, it wasn't believable. You should have come to us because we would have helped you come up with a much better story, essentially. I'm speechless. I am utterly speechless. I need to listen to that again.
I mean, the phone call that you made to me earlier in the afternoon, if you had at least shared that, we could have talked our way through that and figured out a much better solution than whatever whatever you guys came up with, because none of that was believable.
We could have come up with a better solution than what you guys came up with because none of that was believable. Oh my gosh. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me he hasn't just admitted that basically had Stefan contacted them sooner, they could have done more and they would have given him a better story to use instead of the one that was so full of holes. These guys should be arrested for accessory. They have admitted here on this phone call that they helped cover up the crime. You should have come to us sooner. Not you should have come to us. You made the problem bigger because of that. And we could have come up with a better solution. Not we would have supported you to go to law enforcement about it. No, we would have come up with a better solution, something that would have been believed, as opposed to your stupid story that wasn't believable.
And I was thinking earlier today or yesterday that somehow I feel that you were forced into this, and I don't know, and that's just my speculation, that you were compromised and you were forced to participate in this, and as soon as you got away from the rest of them, you should have called me, and we should have and could have discussed this, and the outcome would have been a lot different than what it is right now.
So it definitely sounds like he's not just blaming Jen, but her entire family, and that they forced Stefan to participate in this, and he was compromised, and that as soon as he got away from them, he should have contacted them. What? My God, this guy is delusional. Sounds to me, though, like what he is doing there is trying to tell Stefan, without saying, this is what you need to say, because he's not asking him. He's basically trying to tell Stefan, this is what you've got to tell your lawyers. Here's what I think you should be saying now. You need to dump Jen in it. You need to dump her entire family in it. You need to tell your lawyers that you're just the scapegoat and you didn't do anything wrong. You were forced to participate. You were forced to take Maddie and put her where you put her. It wasn't your choice. It wasn't your decision. You were compromised. He's coaching him, basically. He's far more subtle than Deb. He knows how to spin things, and he knows how to word things in a way that isn't quite as obvious. But he's definitely coaching Stefan right there.
I don't want to get your hopes up, and as I said, don't get carried away with any conspiracy theories, but in a way I was compromised, and, you know, when all that stuff was happening, I was not in my right mind anymore.
Yeah. Well, I understand that, and that's when you probably should have just called me and said, hey, I've got a bit of a situation here, and
that would have been a rational thing to do, but at that point I was no longer capable of rational
actions.
As you
know, I also dropped the uninterrupted version of all these phone calls, and there's been various comments made about them, which, of course, with me not having listened to them, didn't make sense at the time. And someone had commented on there that he was probably going to try for a plea of insanity. And it definitely sounds like that's what he's trying to set up here. So I'm predicting this is what we're going to hear in court. Stefan is going to say that he discovered Maddie. He had nothing to do with unaliving her. He discovered her and he panicked. And he wasn't in his right mind when he drove around for all that time around Kissimmee and Orlando. And then when he took her and hid her in the boot of his vehicle. And then when he sat so calmly with Jen in the townhouse, having a conversation and resetting his phone. And then when he took her and dumped her. None of that, he wasn't in his right mind. He didn't mean to do it. I don't think that's going to fly, but I can bet you that's what the defence is going to argue. He's obviously had a conversation with his lawyers about it, and this is what they've decided is the best way to go.
Yep, I understand. Yep.
I'm capable of it. I had no control over my faculties anymore. It's like the motor was running, but there was a screaming chimpanzee behind the wheel.
In other words, you panicked, and instead of bringing Mummy and Daddy and asking them to get you out of the situation, you thought you could fix it yourself. But let's not turn around and go, oh yeah, he's innocent, he just found her deceased. Maddie had a broken hyoid bone on the right-hand side. That doesn't happen just while you're asleep. And I bet there's a heck of a lot more in that autopsy that tells a story about what happened. And we have his DNA on her. None of this is going to fly. What the jury is going to see is the actions of someone who knew what they had done and was scrabbling to cover up for it.
I understand that. I don't understand lack of emotion.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it wasn't like she was catatonic. She was talking in a normal voice, you know. The only thing that showed any emotion at all was jiggling her leg, but she did that anyway. So
Yeah,
I
just
just,
anxious.
don't know, yeah, she was anxious because she was lying to her teeth. That's okay.
Don't get your hopes up for any conspiracy theories or vast conspiracies. Just understand that anything I did was not done while being
They
within
are
my
both
rational mind.
full
I
on trying to
snapped at that
coach him
point.
here. She's once again going after Jen. And we can all agree, Jen's lack of emotion is a huge red flag. I have no doubt that she knew what was going on and that she helped him plan his alibi. But that doesn't absolve him of what he did. And it is interesting that he has said several times now, don't get your hopes up on these conspiracy theories. So, without outright admitting it, he's essentially saying that he's the one who needs to wear it fair and square. And that this is not going to be pinned on Jen, because obviously his lawyers have told him things that he's not telling his parents, and he realises he's going down for this. But then the delusional side of him kicks in with, I wasn't in my right mind. I didn't know what I was doing. But did you catch that little bit of leakage there? Once again, he came out with, I snapped. I think this is him telling us how Maddie died. He snapped. He lost the plot over something. And he took it out on Maddie.
Yeah.
And I wish I had done the correct thing to begin with. You know, I wish I had run downstairs and shaken her awake and called 911 and all that. And deserved
Well, I wish you had too. I wish you had too. Maybe she could have been saved, but
she was beyond that.
I wonder if there's a little bit of truth in there about running downstairs and shaking Jen awake. Maybe that's why the whole story between the two of them doesn't match in terms of what happened first up that morning. Jen does basically give the notion that she was startled awake by Stearns. And she puts it down to him going in there to put a lead on the dog. Whereas he talks about being in and out of there talking to Jen during the morning. So, did he, when he finally recognised the fact that he had unalived Maddie, dash in and shake Jen awake? Because that sounds very, very specific, doesn't it? He's not saying, I wish I'd done something else, I wish I'd thought to ring 911. No. It's about shaking Jen awake. And we know that she was woken by him unexpectedly. So is that what really happened? Okay, I do apologise. I know this is a serious video, but there's just mayhem going in the background with this pup right now. So that's what all the different noises are. He wants to play. Nobody wants to play right now. So he's going to cause mayhem instead. I find it really upsetting that Deb Stearns is saying, well, you know, had you called 911, you could have saved her. And he's saying, No, it was already too late for that. This is after him essentially saying that he witnessed her spirit leave her body. And we've seen that poem that he wrote where he said something about holding her in his arms while she died. He watched her die. He's admitted that. And he did nothing. It sounds like he snapped. He did what he did. And Maddie died. And he did nothing. He just watched it happen. And that is why he's up for premeditated. The fact that he snapped, but he didn't stop himself. He kept going and he watched her die while he was doing what he was doing.
Okay.
You know, when someone's that ice cold and just gone.
She was in a different part of the house?
Yeah.
She wasn't with you?
Well, she had gone to be with me earlier in the night, but I left her alone for quite a while I was sort of just walking
Geez,
around.
I feel sorry for the flatmates
haunting
if
around the house
they ever
like I
hear
do.
this recording. Can you imagine, in retrospect, hearing that this guy was basically haunting around the house? What was he doing if he was haunting around the house? Personally, I don't buy it because, like I said, we've had his admissions that he was there when Maddie died. It seems to me that what we're hearing, if we get past all the chatter, is that they went upstairs together. Something happened that made him snap, and he strangled her, and he watched her die. He watched the light go out of her eyes. And then, instead of doing something about it, he went out of that room and he wandered around. He haunted around the house. Apparently went outside also and left her there. And then finally returned when she was ice cold. This guy, does he even have a soul? This is really chilling stuff to hear. And I hope that the jury get to hear all these phone calls.
You know, sometimes I go out for walks at night, or I just sit on the couch and just fiddle around on my phone, or just, you know, I don't sleep well at night, especially when I've got to be up early and do something the next day.
Yeah.
And that was the case. So every time I realized anything was wrong, it was.
She was in a different part of the house when you found that out?
She was still upstairs.
Oh, she was upstairs. Okay.
Now, something to
I
just
left her alone
bear
there.
in mind here,
Oh.
because I know, to me, I feel a little bit stressed hearing him come up with this story, because you bet this is going to be the story that is going to be brought up in court to try and get him off. But something he's said here is that he will sit on the couch and fiddle around on his phone. Well, we know what he was probably doing on his phone. But here's what's convenient. There are records that show all the movement, not just of his phone, but also of his Fitbit. One of the warrants that you will see when you go through all the documents is a Google warrant requesting information from all his accounts, including information from his Fitbit. Apparently he had the premium one that basically records everything. So all his Fitbit data will have been retrieved. So I can guarantee you that the state will have mapped out his movements for that entire night. And they'll be able to prove where he was. And I'm pretty certain they will be able to match Fitbit activity to Maddie's death.
Okay.
I had gone downstairs for a while, and by the time I realized anything was wrong, it was just far too late. You know, she'd been gone for a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Just seeing her pale face and blue lips and how ice cold she was, and
I just can't.
I was going to say with you.
I can't comment on that. You know, we've seen all these photos. We've seen all these photos of Maddie. Damn the lot of them. I'm not editing this out because none of them showed any emotion for Maddie. Just to hear him say that when we have all these photos of Maddie looking so happy, but you could see in her eyes that things weren't right. But to hear him just saying that so casually, and for him to be able to admit that he saw that and still not admit to the fact that he did that. Still try and avoid admitting what he did to this little girl that he claims to have loved. And this cow of a woman is allowing him to say these things and is enabling him still. You know, Deb Stearns, if you ever hear this, there is a special place in hell for people like you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I remember seeing my brother when he had passed away, and that's the last thing I remember seeing of him. And so.
yeah, you know, it's just, you can tell.
yes, you can. My dad, yeah.
It's just, when they're gone, really, really, truly gone, there's nothing you can do. There's no coming back.
Yeah.
No, there isn't.
She was past the point of no return.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. Given the crazies of the grandmom and already starting to call her a Gordo, she would have been the next one on the list for gastric bypass. But I just think, you know, maybe God just delivered her out of a place that was going to become really bad for her.
I would not have thought that Deb Stearns could have sunk any lower. But she just has. This woman is... I'm sorry, but this is where he gets his evil from. Unreal. Yes, Maddie doesn't have to put up with the abuse anymore that she suffered at his hands, at your son's hands, for probably 7 years of her life. Maybe there's a small blessing in that. But how dare you turn around and claim that it was her grandmother or that family that were going to cause pain for Maddie, and that she was being delivered from that pain. The only pain that she was being delivered from was the pain that he put her through. Right now, I would love to come face to face with Deb Stearns, because, honest to God, I would like to have some words with that woman. She is the coldest person on the planet to say things like that. I can see why she didn't like Jen, because, by God, the pair of them are so much alike. Cold, insensitive, uncaring, selfish, and evil. She's trying to justify in her head what her son did. In her screwed up, evil mind, she believes that her son saved Maddie from a worse fate. That he did Maddie a favour by unaliving her. Well, I hope that if you get to go and sit and watch when your son goes into that chamber, that somebody tells you after he's dead that they did you, or they did him, a favour by unaliving him and saving him from a future that wasn't going to be great. I'd like to know how you will react to that. Or if someone in general population manages to get to him and he never makes it to that chamber, I hope someone says to you, well, it was fortunate that that happened for him because it saved him from a worse fate. As his mother, will you be happy with that? Now, I gather that the people who in the past have criticised me for going after Deb and Chris are probably no longer subscribed to my channel. But if those people are listening right now, I'm just curious if you think I was too harsh on Deb and Chris still.
I mean, I always knew that life was going to be hard for her. Her mom certainly didn't do her any favors, and since I had no say in the matter of how she was raised or disciplined or anything, there was nothing I could do about it but sit back and watch the train wreck as it unfolded.
Yeah, and she's trying to tell everybody that it was a little angel and she had no problems with her, and you were already telling us that they were butting heads like two Rocky Mountain rams.
Yeah, they had gotten physical on a couple of occasions.
Yeah, I figure they did that
For F's
again.
sake. Now he's buying into it. Life was going to be hard for her. Well, it was going to be hard for her if you kept coming back. Her and Jen probably could have sorted out their problems. Or maybe, when Maddie was a little bit older, she could have spoken to her father and said, I want to go live with you. Or maybe she could have put down her foot with Yolanda and said, I don't want to live with my mother anymore because she's horrible. How dare he? And now, that underhanded statement from Deb. She has, without saying it directly, essentially said Maddie was no angel. Okay, well, you know, what 13-year-old is an angel? You get the hormones happening, and yeah, there are going to be clashes. And I gather there were clashes between her and Jen. We've heard about the text messages that Maddie sent, that Jen was so very upset about. But you know what? Part of what was going on there, part of Maddie's attitude, where do you think that came from? That came from what was going on behind the scenes with Stephen Stearns, with your son, Deborah Stearns. These people make me so wild. They want to blame everyone they can. But not only that, they're trying to say Maddie is better off gone. Now, I do apologise. I know that so many of you often comment that you like listening to my channel because of my calm demeanour. And I well and truly lost my shiz there. But the amount of rage that I feel right now, and the sadness that I feel right now, I couldn't even begin to describe it.
But okay.
You know, I often played mediator between the two of them because I was the only one that could talk either of them down when they started going at it with each other.
Yeah, I know.
Where were the roommates when all this is going on?
You know, upstairs, you know, doing their own things.
Was all that screaming and yelling and crap going on?
Yeah,
I'm surprised they
it's kind
stayed.
of, honestly, it wasn't that far out of place in that house. You know, was often given to yelling or loud crying or outbursts, and was given to yelling and screaming and coming down on people. It was happening a lot more and more often, which is why I kept trying to tell you, I think maybe your meds are becoming less effective. It seems like you're becoming more erratic and more unstable. It seemed like the more stable I became, the more unstable she became.
Oh wow,
like
he is
places.
too. He is definitely trying to blame it on Jen. She was becoming more erratic and unstable. Wow. I think this is going to be a really interesting trial. Because I have no doubt that these are things that he has told his lawyer. He's going to do everything in his power to try and get out of this. Of course, at this point in time, he was probably unaware of the fact that his DNA was all over Maddie. And from what we can see of Jen, she wasn't erratic. She wasn't unstable. If she was erratic and unstable, then in all those interviews that we did, we would have heard that in her voice. We would have seen that in the video interviews. We didn't see that. Her emotions were fairly level. The only time we saw any heightened emotion from her was if it was something that upset Jen. She was going to have a bad birthday. Or Stephen was cheating on her with her daughter. But she certainly wasn't showing signs of being unstable or erratic. She was showing signs of being someone who just couldn't give a toss for her daughter.
Well, I always told you she was a black hole to need. Well, there's nothing to do about it now, but what I hate the worst is that she's sitting in a hospital having 3 meals a day, clean sheets, television, access to phone, reading, walking around free, taking a shower by herself, and you're sitting where you are.
Yeah, I guarantee her food's probably a lot better than mine.
Oh, I
I said
guarantee
this
there's a lot of
before.
stuff that's better
How
than
the
yours.
F would Deb have the faintest clue where Jen was at that point in time? Because it's clear there was no communication between the two families. So this is just pure speculation of Jen being in a mental institution. And I am going to take it at that until I see solid proof. No, hearing it from a fake roommate is not solid proof of Jen being in a mental institution. There is nothing that we've heard here, nothing that has come from any official sources to tell us that Jen is in a mental institution. Now, yes, she should be in jail also. But Stefan is where he belongs. And he's getting what he deserves. He played a much, much greater role in this than Jen, in my opinion. Everything we know and everything, well, every interview, every document, everything points to Stefan being the main perpetrator here. Yes, Jen sent her daughter upstairs with Stefan, but when he's not trying to claim that he wasn't in the room that it happened when it happened, he's admitting that he was there and watched her die. A few times now, he's come out with that he snapped. Bit of guilty leakage there. So he is definitely where he belongs to be. And I'm sure Jen will get her turn. But it's not a he should be free and Jen should be locked up situation. Personally, I believe they both should be locked up. And right now, I actually think that the parents should be locked up also.
Well, it'll all come out in the wash.
Yeah, well,
Hopefully.
a very, 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 very slim chance of doing anything about any of this, and I'm praying to God and asking for His help to make it possible.
Now, if you
but
listen to what he's saying as opposed to what they're saying, they're very much pushing for, all this will come out in the wash. And they're basically trying to insinuate that Jen will get her comeuppance and he'll be freed because he's innocent. But he doesn't agree with them ever when they say these sort of things. He goes on about don't get your hopes up on conspiracy theories. And now he's like, there's a slim chance of doing anything about this. He's saying these things because he knows he's lied to his parents and he hasn't told them the full story. He knows that he's the person responsible for Maddie's death. And he knows that there is so much evidence against him. His lawyer has probably told him, look, you're not getting out of this. But here's the story we're going to tell. So he knows that Jen being arrested isn't going to get him off at all. But then when he says there's a slim chance of doing anything about this, and he says he's praying to God to make it possible, well, shouldn't you be praying for forgiveness? Shouldn't you be praying for your soul? The guy is despicable, utterly, utterly despicable. He's essentially admitting here that he's the key player here. Without saying it outright, he's making it clear that he's right where he belongs, and that they shouldn't get their hopes up on thoughts of Jen being arrested and him being set free, because that's not going to happen. But at the same time, he's praying for some little miracle that God might feel pity for him and set him free anyway.
Well, how about giving up the chivalrous part and lay some truthisms on?
What's that?
I said, quit being so chivalrous and protective and start laying some truth bombs on her.
You know,
There's truth bombs there.
maybe none is groundbreaking or bombastic as, you might hope for, but there are some truths there, some ugly truths and some not so pretty truths, but I guess I reacted to everything the way I did because I wanted to shield her. I wanted to keep her from getting any blowback from him, but
You shouldn't have. You shouldn't have, because that left him only one person to lay everything on. That was you.
Yep. And I should have just done the correct thing from the get-go and
I don't understand half of the gibberish he said then, but they are pushing so hard for him to basically lay it all on Jen. And he originally starts pushing back and saying that it's not, the truths are probably not what they would like. In other words, saying that she's not as involved as you would think. In other words, essentially admitting he was the one that unalived Maddie. And while Jen did play a role in everything, she wasn't the one who unalived her daughter. But then he starts cottoning on to what they're saying about the whole being chivalrous thing, and decides that's a good story. And he's going to run with that now and say, yes, he was protecting Jen. They're coaching him throughout this phone call. And he's a bit slow to pick up on what they're telling him to do, but he's starting to get the idea now. But even still, I don't think he's all the way there in terms of his saying that he was protecting Jen and he should have just let the chips fall as they would, or whatever he said there. Meaning that he should have, claimed that he found Maddie deceased and then try and blame it on Jen? That he is now thinking that it was a bad idea to try and hide the fact of what he did because he got caught, and that he should have found a way to blame it on Jen? I'm not sure what is going on in his head right there. I don't think he's fully processed what his mother is telling him to do. She's pretty clear about it. She wants him to dump Jen in it and to say it was all Jen's doing. I think he knows that he wouldn't get away with that. He's probably been presented with more than enough evidence to show that he wouldn't be able to get off scot-free. And in his head, he's trying to figure out how to work this situation if there is a way for him to blame Jen and minimise his own culpability.
But I couldn't stand the idea of losing them both horribly like that. And I lost them both anyway, so it was pointless.
Yeah.
I was just in so much agony and so much pain, so much shock and so much trauma. My mind was just not, it wasn't me anymore. I wasn't in control of myself anymore. I was doing things that I wouldn't do. I wasn't acting or thinking rationally. It was just panic and fear, and
He didn't
Yeah, I can't
want to
imagine.
lose them both. I really don't think that he gave much of a toss for Jen. I think the relationship between them was one of convenience. I don't think there was any love between them. Had Jen been single without a child, he probably would have kicked her to the curb years ago. So I really don't think he was concerned about losing Jen as well as losing Maddie. He was there for one thing and one thing only. Now, I do believe that he panicked. But he didn't lose his head. He knew what he was doing. He was being calculating. He was so cool, calm and collected that he went in that main gate with the security guard there. And that security guard reached into the car and clicked the gate clicker for him, while Maddie was there in the passenger seat deceased. And that security guard didn't pick up on any signals from Stefan that anything was wrong. This guy, so very coolly and calmly, drove around with Maddie in the car for 2 hours. And then was calculated enough to drive into a parking garage and transfer her into the trunk of his car. He was then cool and calm and calculated enough to go to the vape store, to create his alibi, to go back to the townhouse and reset his phone. And then after leaving Maddie in that car for hours and hours, to then head out and make a beeline for the lakes. I have no doubt that he was headed for one of the lakes out that way. He was calculating. He knew exactly what he was doing. The guy is a compulsive liar.
You know, Stefan, I can't help but get the feeling that none of this that was on the phone was a surprise to you.
She was aware that I had certain feelings towards me.
Yeah. Well, then why would she send her in there to sleep with you?
She used to joke about it, call it an electrocomplex. Used to joke and
Well,
say, you better not leave me for my daughter when she's
She
older.
used to joke and
things like
say,
that.
you better not leave me for my daughter when she's older, and things like that. Meaning that it was a frequent topic of conversation between him and Jen, that there was something going on between him and Maddie. And yet she claims she knew nothing. But we heard her talk about the Woody Allen situation. The woman knew. It is undeniable Now, the Woody Allen situation conversation that she had with detectives, that was after Stefan was arrested. There's no way that he would know that she said that in an interview. Unless, of course, at this point in time, his lawyers have already had disclosure and seen that. Maybe that is possible, but I think that were that possible, then he would say it specifically as she would joke about a Woody Allen situation. Because neither of them are very original when it comes to their lines. They quote each other verbatim. So the fact that he has said it, worded differently, and also referred to there being other conversations, says to me that this is legit and that Jen did know that there was stuff going on. And despite that, she sent Maddie upstairs with Stefan that night.
Laugh about it, and they used to both ogle over me and comment on me and talk about me together and giggle and talk about how nice I looked, and it was not an appropriate
and any
situation.
decent human being finding themselves in a situation like that should have been out of there in a flash. The moment you hear your partner or girlfriend or whatever she was meant to be having conversations with her 12-year-old or younger daughter that are basically sexualizing you, which is what he's alleging here, you don't stick around. And he seems to be forgetting his role in this. He's saying that the things they were saying were inappropriate. Well, let's talk about the things you were doing that were inappropriate. There's a double standard here. And Deb's going along with it. She seems to have forgotten also the things that her son was doing to Maddie. Regardless of whether Jen knew or not, that does not absolve him of what he did. It just shows that he took advantage of the situation. When someone is acting the way that he claims Jen and Maddie were acting, you leave, you get away from that relationship. You don't take advantage of the situation. You don't sleep in a bed with a 12-year-old girl.
And, always had an issue with boundaries. She never respected any boundaries that I tried to set. We got in arguments on more than one occasion about the sleeping arrangements, so I, would beg her, please make her go sleep in her own room. And she said, well, no, it's easier this way for me to wake her up when she's near me. And, it's like we didn't have any privacy and, just didn't have any space to ourselves. And she would suggest, well, maybe you should go sleep in bed instead. And it's like, it's like a twin bed. And I'm,
Oh my gosh.
6
He's
plus
painting
feet
himself as the victim in this situation. You're kidding me. Oh, there were no boundaries. And I spoke to them about that. I didn't like that there were no boundaries. He's basically saying that Jen forced him to share a bed with Maddie. I'm trying to make it sound like it's not something that he would have wanted to do. Did Jen force you to do all those other things? can't believe that he's coming out with this crap. And the worst part is that his mother is allowing him to do so. She's not pulling him up on the fact that what he was doing was so evil and morally wrong. No, because she wants to make sure that the blame is all put on Jen and not on him. And listening to them, it sounds like they also want to give the impression that it was also Maddie's fault because she didn't have any established boundaries.
No, why would I want to do that instead of sleeping in our king-size bed, you know? I should have broken up with her a long time ago and just distanced myself.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
Should have, would have, could have. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah, it seems to be my superpower. Useless superpower. Captain Hindsight.
Well, you know, you certainly didn't appreciate it when I told you that.
No, I certainly didn't. You know, typical, kid trying to make their own way or have their own ideas and realizing only too late, how valuable their parents' advice really was.
Yep. Well, this is a shit show that rivals a pigsty.
Yeah, this is not something that you recover from.
None of us will ever recover from this. Ever.
1 minute remaining.
It's not recoverable. Okay, you got your 1 minute warning, and they're probably not going to give you a fourth run at this.
Yeah, someone's screaming in the background right now, too.
Okay, honey, I hear them. So, you going to try to call back tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll see if I can call back in the next couple of days. I've probably got about $18, $19 left on the phone account, and I've got like 17 cents left in the commissary account.
We'll try to do something about that.
Okay.
What do you need to have the commissary replenished?
What?
When do you need to have the commissary replenished?
Whenever you're able to, I guess. I did get a pad of paper, though.
Nice.
You think of what?
He got a pad of paper.
Oh, okay.
I love you guys, and I'll talk to you in the next couple of days.
Okay, we love you too, honey.
Wow.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm just lost for words. I think that particular phone call is one that I would need to listen to a few times to fully process what it is that I've just heard. They're blaming everyone except Stefan. And sounds like they were tiptoeing towards accusing Maddie of grapes. Maddie had no boundaries. Jen made Stefan share a bed with Maddie. It wasn't his choice, any of that stuff. That's... right now I will definitely only be doing two phone calls at a time from here on in, because my brain is just fried from listening to this. I now utterly detest Deb Stearns. Not as much as I detest Jen Soto, but what an evil, calculating woman. Unreal. I mean, you had them both coaching him over the phone, and Deb Stearns is hell-bent on making sure that she can blame everybody except Stefan. even if it means blaming Maddie. And he's massaging their egos, trying to make sure that he stays in their good graces by telling them, I wish I'd listened to your advice. I should have listened to your advice and got out of that situation years ago. Like you ever would have done that. You were so addicted to what you were doing. I'm going to leave it at that. I could probably talk for ages more about this, but I think we all need processing time. I am just utterly blown away by what I've heard. So, just wow. Yeah, I'm still trying to process. So, look, thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. And all the usual stuff, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know if there's anything I missed, because I know there's a lot that I missed. You can only process so much stuff at one time. And let me know your thoughts on what we've heard so far. So, thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.